Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 178. I hope you're doing well. I missed putting out this podcast last week, again, you might have noticed, because I was in hospital with my son, again, for 4 days. Sometimes I feel like life is all about the stories that play out again and again, around and around, in a bit of a spiral. And it's got me thinking about spirals in general and in nature. In life, it can feel like you're playing out the stories for the 100th time and nothing is changing. But each time you go around again in that spiral, things have shifted a little bit and eventually they do change. I'm thinking, of course, of my family's seemingly endless trips to the hospital again and again, but things are changing and improving each time, little by little, making progress even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. In this vein of thinking about spirals, I've also been thinking about sometimes how our relationships with other people can go around and around in a spiral, playing out the same patterns again and again. I don't know if you've had this experience in your relationships. Sometimes we play out a story and then the same story again, and you wonder, why am I doing this again? But each time you've shifted and learnt something and you're making progress, hopefully. Another way that this has come into my head lately is that I feel like each year is going around and around faster and faster. When we were kids, a year just felt like an eternity, and now a year is absolutely nothing. It goes by in the blink of an eye. I guess it's because a year when you're a child is a huge proportion of your whole life, but as you get older, the proportion is smaller and smaller, and it's quite scary to me how quickly a year goes by now. It feels like each time we go around again, it's like the spiral of a snail shell getting smaller and smaller as we go. Have you felt this? So I've been thinking about these metaphorical kind of spirals lately, but then I got to wondering, where might we see this spiral shape in nature? The first and most obvious one that comes to mind is the spiral of a snail shell, as I mentioned, or a nautilus shell if you're lucky enough to see one of those. But where else might you see a spiral in nature? There are those elegant spirals that follow the Fibonacci sequence, like the spiral arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, or the pattern of scales on a pine cone. And I'm thinking of other spirals like an uncurling fern, or then we could get right up to the macro level of the spiral shape of a tornado or a whirlpool. Sometimes you see a whirlpool in areas of water moving quickly over rocks, or even the spiral shape of our galaxy. There are spirals all around us in nature, and I propose that we spend this week with our senses tuned to find them and to put them in our nature journals. Sometimes this kind of little treasure hunt can be fun. Have you ever seen that there are people out there who always have their eyes tuned for finding hearts in nature? And they'll post photos of heart-shaped rocks or leaves or whatever they find. But being tuned into it seems to make you see it more often. Well, let's tune ourselves to spirals this week and see how many we can find and the different ways that we could capture these spirals in our nature journals. I'd love to hear about where you find spirals near you. You can post a comment under this episode on the website. I'll put a link in the show notes, and let me know what you find. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.